Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, I'm Ivy Slater, and welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. Today, I have the honor and the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Allison Muller from Acri Muller Consulting. She's outside Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and is a board-certified toxicologist and registered pharmacist with over 20 years experience in the field of clinical toxicology. She started her consulting business back in 2014. Allison brings a 20 plus year career in toxicology and was the Poison Control Center at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, where she consulted on the care of poisoned patients within 21 counties of Pennsylvania and Delaware. Dr. Muller is presently an independent consultant and with experience as an expert witness in cases involving alcohol, drug abuse, carbon monoxide, medication errors, postmortem toxicology. She sees her roles as an expert witness as of a teacher. To that end, actually, she is also on the faculty of University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine, where she teaches toxicology to second-year veterinary medical students, as well as her work as an expert witness. Now, listeners who have been following her success story for quite a while, this is the first chance we've actually explored this portion of business. And I found it fascinating as I was connected with Allison to truly learn more and see not only what her area of expertise is, but how she's taken this into a business and a thriving one at that. So thank you for joining me here today, Allison.
Well, thank you for inviting me on the podcast. And I'm excited that you're excited about this topic, and I hope the listeners are as well.
I find it fascinating, and it's something I know so little to truly nothing about. And I never really thought about it. We think about, the pharmaceutical side. We think about, there's expert witnesses. We've never really thought about, or at least for me, I've never thought about, there's a business behind this. Like, how did you end up starting as a pharmacist? Share a little bit of the backstory of your background and how you came to opening your consulting company.
Well, when I was in my undergraduate program studying to be a registered pharmacist, which I still am in Pennsylvania. However, I have not filled a prescription for over 2 decades. I didn't envision myself as a business person. I envisioned myself working in the pharmaceutical industry in a medical information capacity, because I do enjoy writing and I do really enjoy teaching. And so I did some of that as an intern when I was an undergrad, and then I was at a major pharmaceutical company for a short time. And then I heard of an opportunity at the Poison Control Center at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And unfortunately, the company that I was working for wasn't able to make my student position a permanent position at that time. But like they say, when a door closes, a window opens. So as disappointing as that was all the way back then. And then when I heard about the Poison Control Center, I thought, well, that's close. That's still providing medical information, not much writing going on, but, that's close. And, that really was such a blessing because it launched my career in toxicology. And toxicology is an area that is not one of concentration in pharmacy school. Certainly as a pharmacist, you learn about the side effects of drugs and the adverse reactions, but you don't really learn how to treat them. You don't learn how to assess patients with them like you would as a toxicologist. So I got all this training on the job in poison control, first as a specialist in poison information, where I would be answering the hotline, speaking to moms, dads, grandparents about, poisoned patients, usually children, and then also speaking with physicians and nurses about patients that were in the emergency department or otherwise hospitalized due to poisonings. And I really had a lot of opportunities education-wise and training-wise in that role. And I eventually became the director of the Poison Control Center, finished a graduate program in my Doctor of Pharmacy degree, and then also became a board certified clinical toxicologist. Now, after 2 decades being there, I had this kind of vision, well, am I going to be doing this for the next 20 years?
Mhm.
And as much as I loved all the people I work with at Children's Hospital, you never stay for the people. You never stay just for the people because they're going to find other opportunities and possibly leave also. So I went to a medical education company for a couple years. That was a for-profit entity, and that was a really interesting role. I did a lot of travel, and that was a double-edged sword, being the mother of small children.
There's always that travel piece that we either truly, so many business owners either love or hate. They're either like embrace it, or it's very taxing. And it also very much, what I'm hearing you say is you had small children at the time, which is also a huge impact.
Yeah. So that was, I enjoyed it. I have to say that my husband at the time didn't enjoy it, but we did what we had to do. And then that company was struggling financially, and I was the medical director, and I got laid off. And then 4 months later, the company completely shut down. Oh. So then I was at a crossroads. Do I look to go into the pharmaceutical industry, or what's my other path? And so, thanks to some discussions with my former husband, who is still a dear friend and actually my financial advisor still, but we had the discussion that, you going back to the pharmaceutical industry is not going to be a fit for our family. He's like, you're going to be doing more travel than you did with the other company, and you're just not going to be around as much. Yeah, you're going to make great salary, but you can't put a price on, a family's happiness. And he said,
one
why
of the
don't
things
you
is
start?
It's truly knowing, I'm just going to interject here because there's an important learning lesson here of what you're sharing. And that is truly know what you want and why you want it, and some people, there's other things that are higher up on their priorities, or your kids are at a different age, or there's different decisions that families make, and there's no right or wrong to it, but it's knowing what is right for you as that leader.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't a decision to start my own business that was made in one conversation, because, I would be giving up, a high salary. And when you start your own business, you start low. And, I'd be giving up health insurance because I carried the health insurance for the family. But really our priority was, what is the most family friendly? And my husband at the time had said, why don't you start your own consulting practice? You could do what you were doing for that company that had closed on your own. And you've always wanted to be the toxicologist that lawyers would come to when they had complicated drug cases, alcohol cases, chemical cases, et cetera. You can combine that, you start your own company. Now, me as a science person, I never saw myself a business person starting my own company. But with that encouragement, we made it work, and that's what I started doing. And, it started out mostly like medical education and medical writing, which is what I was doing as the medical director for that company that I mentioned. And, a little bit of expert witness work, for legal cases, but it just took time to build that reputation and to really get the word out there of the work that I was doing. So now,
how did you go about doing that? I have a quick question here. How did you go about starting to, get the word out, build a network that people were coming to you? Because so often in building a business, that is the most important piece, because that's where your sales are tied.
Yeah, the key thing, and this is what I would recommend to women who have their own business, regardless of the type of business they have, whether it's a consulting business like mine or a brick and mortar business, is tell everyone you know what you're doing. That's how I got my first client. I literally was telling everybody that I knew, past and present, what I was doing. And my first client was somebody who I used to regularly have lunch with at my old company. She worked for the sister company. We just had a lot in common. We hit it off. We would always have lunch together. And I told her, she goes, oh, I have a client now that's looking for someone with a medical education background and has a doctor of pharmacy degree. Would you come with me to New York to come speak with them? So that's how I got my first client. And that's how it goes from there, is you need to make sure that you have a presence out there, because people have to know you exist before they can actually find you and hire you. And when I say tell
Touche.
everyone,
That's well said. They have to know you exist. It's so often forgotten about.
And it's not only telling people in your professional circles, but telling people at, your child's preschool, work it into conversation, at, your church or synagogue, wherever you're going, tell them what you do, because you don't know who knows who or who may need your services.
100%. And it's so often, actually in my last book, From the Bar to the Boardroom, in the back of that book, there's an exercise that talks you through just that, of helping you thinking through all the areas of people you know. And I know my kids' friends' parents from growing up, they have been great business relationships that have been very fruitful in building my business, some becoming clients, some giving me great referrals. But we forget about every person we know, the people we knew from college, the people we know from high school, the people we know from our professional circles. When you say, Allison, tell every person you know, I endorse that 1,000%. Tell every person you know.
No, I mean, we don't want to be overbearing, but everybody has a story to tell, and if you tell it in the right way, people will be interested to hear it. Regardless if they could provide business or not, they're interested in what other people do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you've been in business for quite a while already. And what do you find interesting, or what have you found fascinating about actually leading your own organization, being that business owner versus the person who was, doing, showing up for the job?
You don't answer to anybody but yourself. When every check I get in the mail is because of something that I did. And that satisfaction matches nothing that I got when I worked for somebody else, because every single thing you do comes back either positive or negative, right? So you own it. Every check you get, it's because of something you did. And every mistake you made, you own it too. So it's all about your accountability, plus and minus. And I just find that to be so rewarding as a business owner.
That happens to be so true. And you're right. It's not just the successes. It is the errors. It's our mistakes. It's our learning curves. And I'll always say, those mistakes are true learning curves. And sometimes it's the best thing that ever happened to us in a crazy way.
Yeah. The quote from Nelson Mandela to the effect of, I never lose, I only win or I learn. And learning is key when you're a business owner, because you can talk to as many people as you can find about advice, but sometimes you just have to learn it yourself, because everybody's business is a little bit different.
I think that's so true. And we have to remember that. And we have to remember, I was actually just a funny thing was just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to an old client. When I say old client, I mean a client back from the printing days, who was actually one of my early clients in the early days of Slater Success. And we were catching up, and she's, we're going to be doing some more work together. And in that, during our time of just catching up, we said, oh my goodness. I said, she's like, oh, do you remember when we were on press with this job? And I was like, oh yeah, I'll never forget that. I lost a lot of money. She goes, I knew you took a hit. I didn't know how much. And I told her, and she was shocked. And she goes, oh my God, what did you do? I said, I was a business owner. I made the next decision on how to make it right. And
that's right. It was all you.
It was all, my name was on that door 3 times over, it is all us. What have been some of your greatest learning lessons in owning a business?
I think the first one is to make sure that you're organized, and there's no such thing as being hyper organized when you're a business owner. And I'm a hyper organized person anyway, but sometimes that maybe ate up some time, especially when you were, working for someone else. Put that time in for the extra organization. Maybe you don't want to work on Sunday afternoon, but if you really organize yourself, whether it be for your accounting or for upcoming talks or for marketing, make sure you take that time to really put everything in place so you're not scattered and you can find things. or like I had mentioned, I just came back from a long vacation. I made sure that my desk was clear before I left. You know, it was a lot of organization to get all that done, but it's definitely worth it because you want to come back to, you know, you don't want to come back to fires, you know, and people trying to reach you or needed this or needed that. So the hyper organization is definitely key.
And what has surprised you?
This was more like a shock. I mean, coming from a nonprofit and then going to a for-profit company. I mean, I was with, you know, Children's Hospital for almost 20 years, you know, the nonprofit, and then going to a for-profit for 2 years. That was a big shift for me. But the biggest surprise was when I got laid off. I mean, that just doesn't happen, you know, in a academic medical center, especially, you know, someone of my skill set. And I was really shocked because in the way that they did it was, you know, there was no warning and, you know, they had a couple layoffs. I think that was the 4th round of layoffs that they got me on in the 2 years I was there. So obviously they were struggling the whole time I was there. But I was on the 4th round of layoffs and it was, you know, kind of like, okay, you know, here's what's happening and here's, you know, what's going to go forward, you know, after you depart. And okay, I'm going to go back to my office, clear my office out. Oh no, take your purse and, you know, we'll walk you out. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, it was just a very like upsetting and shocking experience. And we would never have treated someone like that, you know, at a hospital setting. I mean, even people who were fired for cause, we don't treat people like that. So that was a bit of a shock to me.
That makes sense. And what have, in building your business in the last, you know, what is about 6+ years, 6-7 years now, what has surprised you in that?
That, you know what, you really exponentially grow your business year after year. And at least for me, it's not something that happened in a year. Like I always say, well, the first few years of my business, I doubled my income. But yeah, double of a small number is still a relatively small number. So it just takes time. And the way you're going to ride that out is going to be different. For some people, it means, you know, not leaving a full-time job and, you know, kind of starting the business slowly while they're doing that. For other people, it means jumping in with both feet, you know, putting all they've got, you know, savings, loans, whatever they need to do to get it going. But yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind, that it doesn't happen overnight. Yeah, some people, you know, have beginner's luck and, you know, they might hit it right away. But especially for a business like mine, that's a consulting business, you don't all of a sudden get, you know, this, you know, huge influx of clients right off the bat. Now, I did have beginner's luck and I got my first client even before I had the name of my business and my LLC established. But that was one client, you know what I mean? So that was lucky, but you don't get this like influx of clients. I mean, for me now, I just had my 7-year company anniversary this past January, so 8 months ago. I mean, I get a call every single day about a new case, about a potential case. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean I am retained for that case that I get called on every single day, because there's lots of factors to go into if the attorney ends up retaining me or retaining a toxicology expert to begin with. But, you know, that didn't happen in the first year. That didn't happen in the second year. It's a process. So expect to really need a healthy dose of patience for this.
And, you know, I love how you're saying, you know, you have a connection every day and they don't all work out. And that's something to be learned from, you know, how many conversations we truly end up having in life to see what eventually works out.
And you never know. I mean, I had this one attorney call me. Now, he had assumed, because I'm on faculty at the veterinary medicine school at Penn, that I could handle cases involving poisoned animals. He had a poisoned racehorse, and he needed a toxicology expert to opine on the case. And I said, I would love to help you out, but when I teach at the vet school, I'm actually teaching only about poisoned dogs and poisoned cats, and I'm not a veterinarian. I'm not a veterinary toxicologist. I'm teaching human toxicology to future veterinarians because they need those principles, and the antidotes are frankly all human antidotes anyway. But I said, you know what? I am on faculty at the vet school, as you know, so let me put some feelers out. And I helped him find an expert who is a veterinary toxicologist. So now he's going to remember me. If he's like, you know what, when I have my next alcohol case or drug case in a human, I'll know who to call now because he was so appreciative of that. So, just because you're not hired for the case doesn't mean that that's a dead end.
It's true. And I think it's important to know that we need to be touching base with our relationships. And that's what I'm hearing you say, that every conversation you have is of value, even if you don't see it in that moment.
They learn something from you, you learn something from them, and maybe it'll be future business. But yeah, it's all about talking to people, and how you go about doing that is really an individual thing. Like some people really engage with potential clients on Twitter. Some people really engage with potential clients on LinkedIn or Facebook, in a social media platform. Some people have newsletters, some people do postcards. For me, the way I reach people is I do a lot of teaching. So it's both webinars and in person. I do continuing legal education talks for lawyers in different venues. It might be for a national organization or for a bar association. And so they come away with value. They come away with an hour, sometimes 2, of toxicology that they can understand as a non-science person, and that could be applied to their current or future cases. And they also come away with credit for their licensure as an attorney, and maybe a lunch too. So that, to get my face and my name out there, and to be speaking to, whether it be a group of 10 lawyers or 200 lawyers, that is a big reach for me.
I love it. If you had one tip to share in the building and growing and transitioning from working, and I think one of the fascinating pieces of this conversation is shifting from working from a nonprofit back to for-profit, being a business owner. What's the one tip that you would share with our listeners today? I would say it's all in your mindset. So, you must envision yourself succeeding, and you may not succeed in the way that you want to succeed tomorrow, or maybe your success is going to look differently than you envisioned, but you need to lead with the positive. Like, for example, don't have the mindset of, I don't know how to use QuickBooks. No, mindset should be, I don't know how to use QuickBooks yet. Always lead with a positive mindset. So this law of attraction, which I very much subscribe to, that if you are leading with the positive things are to come to you. Now, you can't control what those positive things always are going to be, but that definitely is going to help you in your business, and you're going to show up as a positive person, because nobody likes to work with someone who's negative, right? So even if you think you're being positive and you're controlling what you're saying and doing, your whole mindset really is reflected when you're interacting with clients and potential clients. Very true and well said. It is the positive mindset and seeing and believing where you're going versus looking back and seeing where you've been or what's not working. So thank you for sharing that piece and endorsing a belief that we're both on that same page with. Share with our listeners how they can continue to learn more about you and follow you. And I think the best place to find me in the easiest way, because my website address is a little bit long, is just put in Allison Muller Toxicologist. Or Allison Muller Philadelphia, and I will show up. My LinkedIn page will show up, and my website will show up. I have a blog, and then I regularly post on LinkedIn as well. And then I also would showcase any talks that I'm giving for those who are attorneys who are looking to get continuing education credit. Allison, thank you for a wonderful and informative conversation today. Listeners, remember to check out Dr. Allison Muller on LinkedIn, as well as ACRI-MULLER-CONSULTING.com. You'll see all of the information in your show notes. Listeners always know what I say at the end of her success story. Number 1, hit subscribe so we can continuously come into your inbox every Monday morning with great interviews like today and some other content information, as well as take a moment and write down what you took away from listening today. I always say it's important not to just show up to listen, but to take a moment and see what your takeaway is and what you're going to implement by that. That is the key, implementation. Thank you again for joining me today at Her Success Story.